Next up, we have with us, and we're incredibly honored that he's joining us again for the second year in a row, Senator Ted Cruz, who is the ranking member of the Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation. He's also on Foreign Relations, Judiciary, and Rules Committee. And we know he's pressed for time. Obviously, there are some things going on Capitol Hill. So we're going to ask him to get started right away. But please join me in offering a very warm welcome to Senator Ted Cruz.
Well, good morning. Thank you. It is great to be back with you again. Thank you for the tremendous work y'all do. I appreciate the hard work that each of you do. I appreciate the impact that airlines and especially regional airlines have in Texas and all across the country. And I appreciate y'all being here today. Last year, I spoke at this conference almost exactly the same time of year, almost exactly the same time. And I got to say, in the past year, it has been a busy and wild year in the Senate Commerce Committee. It's also been a difficult year for the aviation industry. It started with the December meltdown, which was quickly followed by a nationwide ground stop when the NOTAM system broke down. And the system is still enduring considerable strain. This past spring, the Department of Transportation told major airlines to reduce flight operations at 3 New York area airports from May until October of next year, or face losing slots. There's a shortage of maintenance technicians, pilot examiners, and of course, commercial pilots. And dozens of small communities have lost air service, and dozens more are operating with substantially reduced air service. I want you to know I understand how much of an impact each of these challenges has on the men and women in this room, on the regional airlines especially. And regional airlines represent 1/5 of all enplanements in the state of Texas and are key to the functioning of the entire American aviation ecosystem. Earlier this year, I was at the headquarters of American Airlines, visiting with their senior leadership. While I was there, I raised the fact that American had just announced it was cutting service to Del Rio, Texas, a small community in South Texas, about 2 hours west of San Antonio. I leaned in hard. I told the CEO and his entire senior leadership it would be a mistake to cut off service to that community. One of the leaders responsible for the decision and for the regional regional operations explained that they had the planes to fly the routes, they just didn't have the pilots. There should be no real debate whether or not there is a pilot shortage. The industry clearly needs more pilots. Some major airlines and most regional airlines have fewer pilots and a smaller workforce than pre-COVID. As travel numbers continue to surpass 2019 levels, carriers are stretched extraordinarily thin. Most of my colleagues and I have been focused on how to try to solve these issues. In the Senate FAA bill, I'm pleased with some of the progress we're making to try to help alleviate this shortage. There are some common sense regulatory barriers that we can address to make a difference for the aviation workforce. The Senate bill looks at how to improve early testing protocols for high school aviation maintenance programs. It eases the pipeline for military mechanics into civil careers and improves the Airman Certification Standards Program. These provisions aren't perfect, but we'll continue to work with the industry and with the FAA throughout the legislative process to get them right in the final bill. It was also a bipartisan priority for multiple committee members to extend in the base text the Aviation Workforce Development Grant Program. There's more we can do. I hope we look at the designated pilot examiner issue. Pilots should have easier access to testing instead of being stuck waiting for weeks. And as I talked about last year, I hope that the bill is on the floor. We can address the issue of allowing GI Bill benefits to go towards basic pilot licenses when those pilots are part of a commercial pipeline. I also think we can reach bipartisan agreement on tax incentives for pilot training once we get to the floor, along with other items related to workforce development that are outside of the Commerce Committee jurisdiction. I'm also supportive of the amendment that has been offered by Senators Thune and Sinema that allows for pilots to go through an FAA-reviewed structured training program as a part of their flight hours. Before we get to the floor, however, we need to pass an extension. That's right now on the floor. As many of you may know, we will hopefully extend authorities very soon, and the bill that's on the floor extends it through the end of the calendar year. I'm hopeful the 3 months between now and the calendar year will give us time to complete Senate consideration of FAA reauthorization. As most of you know, we were scheduled to mark up a bill. And the chairman of the committee, Maria Cantwell, she and I had been on the phone till nearly midnight the night before, negotiating different aspects of the bill. And we'd reached agreement. We had reached a bipartisan compromise on the bill that had a lot of important provisions, including provisions designed directly to address the pilot shortage. The morning of the markup, we arrived and we had expected that the bill would pass, and if it would pass either unanimously or very close to unanimously. We were anticipating a big bipartisan vote. And then the morning of the markup, Chuck Schumer called Maria Cantwell, very unhappy, in particular with the Thune-Sinema provision. And he threw a fit and essentially demanded that she cancel the markup. Now, I have to say, 10 a.m. came when the markup was supposed to start, when we were supposed to gavel in. The hearing room was full. I suspect some of y'all were in the hearing room. And it was a little surreal. We didn't gavel in for a markup. Instead, we're sitting there, and I had Maria Cantwell on my left and John Thune on my right, and the two of them were arguing like crazy. Right there in the hearing room, as I told the Republican senators over lunch, I said, look, y'all have been proud at Thune. He was swinging haymakers. He was really going at it. And, you know, I was playing my usual role as the kinder, gentler one. But they went back and forth. We spent about a half hour with that argument. At some point, we went back to the conference room in the back. And I remember asking Maria, I said, look, we had an agreement. What happened to this? And she said, well, Schumer doesn't want us to go forward. I told her, listen, let me be very clear. If Mitch McConnell told me to back out on a deal I had cut and to cancel a markup that was scheduled, I'd tell him to go jump in a lake. And Thune was next to me and said, yeah, that's what Ted would do. I'm like, yeah. It didn't happen. So where are we now? I don't know where we are now. I think we're very close on every issue, but we still have an impasse on the Thune-Sinema amendment and with Chuck Schumer. We got 3 months to try to bring them together. Right now, Schumer has indicated he has no interest in budging and he's willing to take the whole thing down over it. So what I can commit to you, Maria and I have lunch. You know, when we started the year, this year, it was interesting. I have to admit, when I came in as ranking member, she looked with a fair amount of trepidation at what is this year going to be like. And she said, listen, the two of us can beat the crap out of each other, or we can roll up our sleeves and try to work together. Which is it going to be? And I kind of laughed. I said, to be honest, some of both. I mean, listen, we're adults. We're working in Washington. There are going to be issues on which we have partisan divides. That's okay. Our parties believe different things. So there are going to be issues that are shirts and skins. If the Democrats want to ban the internal combustion engine, they're not going to get any Republicans on support of that. But there are also going to be issues on which we roll up our sleeves and work together, because that's the reason people join the Commerce Committee. The Commerce Committee has a long history of passing bipartisan legislation that is pro-jobs and pro-growth and pro-competition. And that has been my record on the Commerce Committee, of passing legislation over and over again focused on exactly that. And one of the things Maria and I agreed at the beginning of the year is that she and I would have lunch every 3 weeks together, which we've continued to do. I can tell you our last lunch, probably half the lunch was focused on the FAA reauthorization bill. and talking about the need to get it done, and frankly, the need just to navigate between Thune, Sinema, and Schumer, and that is not an easy navigation right now. I think we'll get it done. I think it's important to get it done, but at this point, it's a matter of bringing the players together and trying to find some modicum of common ground. Let me talk also for a minute about the FAA administrator. As you know, the administration had previously nominated Phil Washington to be administrator. Now, I sat down with Mr. Washington. He seemed like a perfectly nice guy. He just didn't know a damn thing about airplanes. And I got to say, for FAA administrator, that seems a pretty important part of the job, to be an expert in aviation and ideally an expert in aviation safety. I spend a lot of time on your airlines. I spend a lot of time on airplanes flying all across Texas and all across the country. And when all of us, when we get on a plane, when we put our families on a plane, when we put our children on a plane, we want an FAA that knows what it's doing and is making the very best steps possible to keep our families safe. And unfortunately, with the Phil Washington nomination, it was a nominee who simply wasn't prepared to do the job, didn't have the experience to do the job. We wasted a lot of months on that nomination. I said at the outset, this nomination's not going to go through. But the administration didn't believe it. So we wasted a lot of months on that. Ultimately, once we had united enough votes, we had not united Republicans, and we'd united quite a few Democrats against the nomination, realizing it is a bad idea to put someone in charge of the FAA who doesn't have the experience to do the job effectively and to keep the flying public safe. The result, though, is we've spent now over a year without a Senate-confirmed administrator of the FAA. As you know, we have a new nominee. Michael Whitaker is a nominee who certainly appears to have significantly more aviation experience than Phil Washington did. I can tell you where we are right now, which is we're assessing his background. We're in the process of examining his record, examining his time at the FAA, examining his time in the aviation industry, and sitting down and talking to him. And I expect if the nominee demonstrates that he's qualified and competent and there are not serious skeletons in his closet that we don't currently know about, I expect and hope that we'll move expeditiously to confirm him or another qualified nominee. I think it's important to get a qualified administrator in there. And I think it is unfortunate that we've had as much delay as we've had. So, the last year has been busy. I expect the next year to be busy. But I want to say to each of you, I appreciate the hard work you do. I appreciate aviation is something that matters enormously to the state of Texas and to the country. It matters to our economy. It matters to jobs, not just the jobs you provide in the aviation sector, but the jobs that millions of other workers that are going to do one job or another, millions of other just consumers that are going to vacation. Air travel is critically important. So I'm proud to work with the men and women in this industry, and I'm proud to be by your side. Thank you.
Okay, I just want to say thank you so much, Senator Cruz, for all that you do and all of the advocacy, and I hope that everyone in this room can continue to be engaged so that we can help break that impasse and get a bill that answers the mail on our really important priorities.